We are now recording. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I am joined today by Cassandra Daly of Hazel and Cass Photography. And Cassandra's going to have a class coming up on the APNPI Academy called Art of the Womb Bowl Masterclass. Cassandra, it's so lovely to be joined by you today, all the way from New Zealand. Tell us about yourself and how you got your start in photography.
Well, my name's Cassandra. I'm from New Zealand, all the way down here, bottom of the world. How did I start in photography? I think, like a lot of people in our industry, I'm like, I was a typical mumtographer. I never really sought to be a newborn photographer, but it kind of found me. I actually failed photography at high school and at university. And I was in my first year of university. I studied a Bachelor of Visual Communication Design, and I wanted to major in photography, and my tutor told me no, like I need to consider another major. So I did, and so I did advertising and marketing. But yeah, so
I'm dying. That's literally the best story I've ever heard about how somebody got their start. Listen, obviously they didn't know what they were talking about because
no, well, the guy was real cynical. He's just like, you're gonna just end up being a wedding photographer. I was like, what's wrong with wedding photographers? But he was just old.
Right. They wanted, okay.
Yeah, he'd probably laugh knowing that my full-time job is just photographing babies. Probably just wouldn't, yeah. I'd love to tell him one day. I really want to see him. I do this full time and you failed me. So then my daughter Hazel was born, and then I started taking heaps of photos of her, and I became like fully, obsessed. I think everyone knows what it's like to get that bug, and you just can't stop, and then you start doing your friends, and it snowballs and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's kind of what happened. And I was just taking photos of Hazel, my daughter, and my friends' babies on like a snap and shoot camera, like nothing fancy. And then one day I had a bad day at work, and I was working as a graphic designer, and I was like, I want to do this full time. So I literally made a Facebook page like that night, and I just on a whim called it Hazel and Cass, because daughter Hazel, me Cass. And then my friend, who was quite a bit of an influencer, I suppose, like back then before Instagram was a thing, she kind of posted that I was going to be doing baby photos, and then bam, I started getting bookings like literally that night, and the next day I booked in people, and I didn't even own like a professional camera. So I started panicking, and so I was like, okay, people want to book me, this is wild. And the photos are pretty average, but and so that next day I went on my lunch break and bought a camera, and then I started doing it.
Quickly learn how to work that camera, because I'm sure it was different than your other point and shoot or whatever you were using.
Yeah. And it's interesting because what I'm going to be teaching in the Art of the Womb Bowl, and the main pose that I do, which is like a baby on their back, all like in a nice little womby, like cuddly pose, is actually one of the poses I did naturally when I first started. So before I started looking at, back then, it was 6.5 years ago, there wasn't as many tutorials. I think maybe we had Creative Live. And so I was kind of just doing it on a whim and just photographing them how I thought a baby should be photographed. And so some of my initial first photos, before I kind of became untouched by the industry, were these womby poses on their back with a little wrap around them, all tucked in, their little head, just cuddled to the side. And yeah, but now I do a more refined version of that.
And yet now it's sort of like your signature, and what people know you for. So that's such an interesting progression, that it was something that just came so naturally to you. So what will people taking the class, what can they expect to learn from it?
So they'll expect to learn how to do, I suppose I call it the Art of the Womb Bowl, because it's based around a bowl and bowls and different types of bowls, because there's so many different bowls. I just love bowls, and I love round circular shapes. It's a big part of, circles are friendly and people like them, and they're just nice to look at, and it's good composition. And so it's literally just based around bowls and different ways you can do it. There's like a different kind of wrap that I can do when you've got a really fussy baby, where you kind of like strap them down and then unravel them, and then sort of voila, without giving away too much. That's such a silly, bad explanation.
But it sounds nice. No, but I was going to say what I like about it is that I love anything that can be versatile, and where you can, like get the most, your bang for your buck, you put them in this situation, and then the different ways you can photograph and the different adjustments you can do to make the image completely different. So
yeah, and it's literally the same pose. I just style it in different ways, and a lot of it is about how you can just learn how to do one pose, but you can apply it in so many different ways. You know, put a romper on them, have them naked, different types of wraps around the outside, and the way you set up the bowls and like the different layers and the textures, and it's all kind of about that. It's just one pose, so many different ways. And also like there's a reflux baby I have, and I work with that and trying to like lift them up higher, and just a little bit of everything in there. It's quite good. And our flower wreaths as well.
flowers, yes.
Flowers.
Gorgeous flower arrangements. I love them. I'm a big floral fan, so
Ditto. I think we all are, because it's like the
they're
best,
just so
isn't it?
pretty. And I think newborns and flowers, they just sort of go together just naturally almost, or like we feel like they should. I mean, it's not like they're literally born in a field.
Well, no, the Cabbage Patch babies were though. They're born in.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's why Cabbage Patch Kids.
I start putting babies in cabbages.
Babies come from a garden, do they not? Don't get me started. I can sing the Cabbage Patch Kids song.
Oh my gosh, is there a song? I didn't know.
There is a song.
You had a song.
I had a record. There was a record back in, let's call it 84.
Wow, we're missing out in New Zealand. I think we had a book.
Oh no, there was a record and there was a song. And
but we had Angitties.
I'm embarrassing myself right now. I need to stop.
I'm gonna YouTube the song after that.
Oh my God, I wonder if it exists. That's a good task for everybody watching right now. Go and see if that song exists, or if I've just made it up in my head. No. What's one thing that you wish you knew earlier in your career about newborn photography, or just the industry in general?
Oh, good thing. Good question. I think to let the journey, to not be influenced by other people. So I started out like, I was talking about how the stuff I do now, the womb pose is what I did earlier on. When I started really looking into the industry and started following other photographers and trying to be like them and do everything that I wanted to do, I started like diversing out, and then my work started becoming a bit odd. And like I can't explain it, but I went through this phase. It was about 7 months where I was putting babies in different hoops and trying to do this, and just it wasn't quite me. And it's at that point, it's kind of like a diamond. I started here, I started diversing out to here, and it was at this point where I realized I needed to come back and look at my original work, what I was doing, without being influenced too much by other people, and trying to be them, and find out what made me love newborn photography. And then I just sort of came back in to this point, back to where I was, but more refined style.
Yeah, it's such a natural part of the journey too, though, right?
Yeah, and to let it happen
yourself. I mean, I am envious of those photographers, and they do exist, that just come out of the gate strong with a very clear vision. And they don't, or at least it seems like they never diverged from that, and they use this work. But I think there's so many of us that took the other route.
And I think it's good. I think it makes you stronger.
Analogy is really neat. I've never actually thought about it that way, but you're absolutely
like that. And then I'm coming back out here, and then I'll probably come back into here. I especially have with like my sibling photography that I've been doing lately. I was starting to get to focus on these big smiles and looking at the camera, and then I actually started coming back to, I think it was like my 5th or 6th photo session I ever did, and it was just the babies curled in, their eyes closed, cuddled up. And so I've come back to that. So it's just interesting. Like a lot of people don't look back at their old work, they cringe too much, but I always look back at my old work, because that was when it was in my most purest form of photography for me, before I was following everyone. And I was just doing what I wanted.
To think about it too, though, is like that initial thing that drew you to doing what you're doing now, because there was something, and there's power in that. So that's beautiful.
I could go on.
What excites you about photography right now?
So definitely the creative part of it. So I actually don't like taking the photo itself or editing so much. I actually just love the setups, the colors, the textures, the whole design of it. And I think that comes from definitely my graphic design and my design background. And I think that's why I love the genre of photography. I probably wouldn't do photography otherwise if it wasn't for newborn photography, because it's definitely the setups that inspire me, and like the shapes and the poses, definitely posing. So I don't think I could be one of the photographers that don't pose, because I get too much of a kick out of like just sort of adjusting that baby's head and getting that beautiful circular motion. Like, I don't know, like that, just like, I'm like, ooh.
Well, it's just so, yeah. Well, when
Yeah.
you have a vision and you know what you want to execute and what you want to achieve from it, there's
Yeah.
satisfaction in that, right? Like when you find
more like art, you know, like I love that. Like my galleries aren't huge, they're about 20 at max, and I have sessions where they're just 6 photos. And the idea is, and especially because we, you know, we do all our own printing and framing in house, idea is you just want a few really beautiful photos for your wall. And that's where, you know, I come in. I want to do more of the art than the sort of more documentary stuff, and like more graphical. Like I like my work to be more graphical, but I definitely do like the more documentary stuff to fill galleries, and that's what parents want. But I definitely get a buzz out of like finishing the piece. Like you might be able to see behind me, like the wreaths, the flower wreaths on the wall. Yeah, and then that's going to be hung up in a studio forever. You know, not a studio, in a bedroom, nursery.
your space. It's lovely. No, your work is gorgeous. And I definitely think that there's something to be learned from somebody who has a very clear vision and then is able to bring it to life and show how they can do that. So I think everybody would be inspired by what I mean, even just hearing about how you got your start, like failing out of photography class. And now this is where you've landed.
It was a whole course. It cost me like $5,000. New Zealand, so it's probably double over in Canada.
It's still about $5,000. I think our money is about the same.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah.
Yes, so I couldn't tell you. Euros, forget it. Way too much. Well, it has been absolutely lovely speaking with you today, Cassandra. Thank you for joining me. Again, Cassandra's class, The Art of the Womb Bowl, is coming up on the APNPI Academy. Definitely go check that out and learn her gorgeous processes.
Aww.
Thank you, Cassandra.
Yeah, nice to meet you, talk to you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.